What is good, y'all? Thank you so much for everyone that waited patiently. Welcome back to Outside the Clutch. I'm super excited for tonight. There's not going to be a huge amount of intro because I really want to dive in and get the most of our time with our guests tonight. The one thing I am going to say is the important thing about your animals is your care for your animals. And I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing on this show. One, without my listeners. You guys are freaking amazing, everyone that supports the show. But two, I wouldn't be able to do it without my sponsor. And it's important to share the love with them. Here at Outside the Clutch, we're honored to be sponsored by VivTech. Are you ready for innovation? Tired of the same boring product that's been used for 30 years? Ready to give your reptiles and amphibians the UVB they really deserve? Then look no farther than VivTech. Their 3-watt LED bulb provide the UV rays your animals have been missing. With 3 bulbs to fit your pet's climate needs for optimal husbandry, plus a dimmable feature, and it's the only bulb with a 2-year warranty in the industry. So what are you waiting for? Go to vivtechproducts.com today. Use code FCLUTCH0322 for 10% off to provide your animals the best care they've ever had. All right. Y'all should know who it is. It's a living legend tonight. I'm super excited to have this man on. He's near and dear to my heart because he was my mentor's mentor, the one, the only, the Mr. Great, Brian Gundy. How you doing, sir? How's your day been? Happy World Snake Day. Oh, no. Are you there, Brian? Oh, he's there. He's moving. Can you hear me, Brian? Can you hear me? Oh, no. Can you hear me? You can't hear me? Uh-oh. We had more technical difficulties. Let's see here. How about now? Can you hear? No? You can't hear anything? Yeah, it looks like he doesn't have sound for some reason. For some reason, he lost sound. And I can hear my... Yay, technology! Let me see. Trying to... There's nothing that should mute it. Everything's open. I'm not sure why we lost this, guys. This is called Murphy's Law. Anything that can't, Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Yeah. It might, yeah, you're right. It might be a stereo volume. Let me see. There we go. He's back. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
That was weird. I don't know why it popped out like that.
I don't know. It's just.
Well, now that we had that awkward silence and after that endearing moment, how's your day going, sir? Happy World Snake Day.
It's doing great. I actually did 2 reptile shows today and 3 yesterday, so it's a good weekend for reptiles.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. We have our local show here. It's
And when I say show, I don't mean expo. I mean educational presentation.
Right. I was gonna jump into that. You're one of the guys that probably one of the most packed schedules as far as education shows in the industry that I know of.
I don't know. I don't know very many people that do what I do, so I don't know what to compare.
I know, what was his name before Brian took it over
Oh,
for
Brad.
Brad from
Brad.
Roaming Reptiles.
Yeah.
That used to be a very packed schedule as well.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I
But
do a fraction of what he did.
how many shows do you think you're doing a year right now?
Probably about 300.
Phew, that's insane.
I know.
That's insane. That's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, that's awesome. But to think you got, because you breed on top of that, you do all kinds of, you herp on top of that, and
Every
oh my
chance I get.
lord, that's holy crap! Like, that's 65 days a year off, and still fitting all that other stuff in. Kudos to you, sir.
Yeah.
You must be good with schedules. I'm not. I would never be able to maintain that.
It's funny because I was a manufacturing manager for 30 years, or 20, yeah, 30. And I can't help but think that everything I learned for that 30 years and everything that I've learned up till this point has really kind of groomed me in many, many ways to be able to do what I'm doing. I've learned so many different things from so many different um, aspects of my business in my um, coming up to this point in life. So yeah, scheduling is something I've become familiar with, and I'm comfortable with it. And yeah, it gets a little tricky sometimes to figure out the logistics, from going to one party to another and things like that, but it all works out.
100% understand that. How did you decide to begin those shows? Like, I guess one motivated you to start education shows, and then kind of take us in the process of how it started out for you and how it's evolved to what it is now.
Sure. So when my kids, who are now in their 30s, were in elementary school, I was asked by one of their science teachers to come to their school and do sort of like a seminar, I guess, on reptiles, because they knew, excuse me, at the time I was actually breeding colubrids.
Okay.
And so I went and took a couple days off school of work and went in and did some educational things for the kids at their school. And then about a week or two later, after I had done that, I had received a phone call from one of the parents of one of the kids in my children's class, and the lady asked me if I would be willing to bring my animals over to her son's birthday party, and just share the reptiles with them. And I said, yeah, I'd be glad to. And she says, well, how much do you charge? And I said, well, I don't charge anything. I'd be glad to do it for free. And she goes, oh, no, 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 no. I have to pay you. And I just thought, well, let's go $100. And she says, sure. So I did that party. And then a couple weeks later, one of the kids from that party had told their parents, and then their parents called me up. And before you knew it, there was the second party. And then it just kind of, just through word of mouth, I would probably do 3 or 4 a month back in
Wow.
the day. And then about 10 years ago, I got laid off my job after working 30 years at the same company. And I thought, I got kind of scared for a couple of days, wondering what the heck I was going to do with my life. And then I thought, I wondered if I could turn my hobby into a business where I would actually go out, and I'd already been doing them for a while. And I just thought, I wonder if I can actually turn this into a full-time job. And so I started going out and doing cold calls at schools. And I'd walk in with a duffel bag, a snake and a lizard in it, and some business cards, and I'd introduce myself. And before you know it, I started doing educational programs at school. And I had a 6 month severance package. So I gave myself 6 months to figure it out and to think, if I could actually turn this into a full time gig. And sure enough, after that 6 months, um, I was able to probably doing maybe 15 programs a month, and that was just enough to pay my bills. And I just started, focusing in on it and doing more and more cold calls. And now I've probably got about in schools, probably about 200 schools that I do programs for almost on an annual basis. And yeah, it's just a blast. You know, um, I get to do 3 more tomorrow,
That's
and
awesome.
I can't wait.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. So you're one of the ones that have seen a multitude of years in the industry. What like you have I want to say it's a span of almost 30 years, correct?
Oh yeah, sure, easy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Um within that time frame, what's one of the things that's kind of stuck out to you the most? Or
Well, I would back in the day, you if you wanted to see photographs of someone's snakes, this was way before internet. So you would send them a stamped, uh, 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 self-addressed stamped envelope, and then that person that you were sending it to would either send you a list of animals that he had for sale. Sometimes they would include photographs of those animals, and that's how we did it. Uh, yeah, you just sent your price list out,
that's
and
awesome.
yeah,
It's amazing what we kind of take for granted now with all the technology advances.
sure. And then I'll tell you, back then, I remember it was, it was it was just super exciting whenever I could get a letter from a breeder and then see actual photographs of animals, that I was possibly going to buy. And yeah, it was a very efficient way of doing things. It worked out just without any glitches, and it worked. Yeah.
Heck yeah. We were so my wife kind of made me laugh about this. I have almost 10 years on my wife, and we were joking around. There's this trend going on social media right now about talking about things in the 90s, right? I was like, well, I
Sure.
remember like cassettes and like
Yeah.
like the end of 8 tracks too,
Oh well.
right? And like putting those in because my
Yeah.
grandparents' vehicles and stuff. So I remember that stuff, but
Yeah.
I didn't really use it the way some people did. But so I was talking to her about cassettes and like having to put the pencil in when it tried to eat the tape, right? And
Yeah.
you had to
Yeah.
rewind it and hope that it didn't tear the tape and
Yeah.
like trying to listen at the right time and hit record on something so you could copy it. And
Sure.
she's like, "What?" And then because she started laughing, the trend is like 90s stuff, and they're like bringing up, well, burning CDs, what's that mean to you? And they're like, when you overcook a CD, what's a
Yeah.
CD? Or something crazy like that, right? And I was like,
Right.
God, like if they only knew what you had to do before. And I think it gives a appreciation for what you do and what we all kind of do if we look back at you guys, because you've essentially paved the way and you've shown us how to not only one be successful in the industry as a whole, but to kind of share it. And that's what I love about you is you're very open about everything and you want everyone to learn and you're willing to take that time. Like I think it's one of the things that Earl also took from you is like you're always sharing your phone number out with people and you're like, hey, if you have a question, just call me, come directly to me.
Mm.
I don't have
Yeah.
an issue with that. And I think that that's something that the industry sometimes sorely lacks. Where did you decide to do that? Because you have some people that kind of close down. This industry has a way of doing that to some people, unfortunately. But
Sure. Well, I remember, yeah, probably close to 30 years ago, I called a breeder and I was looking for some information on how to breed boas. And boas are a little difficult, they're a little unique, and takes a little bit of understanding and some time to kind of study the breed. But um, anyway, the people that I had called, they had made it very clear that I was not a customer of theirs, and I had answered yes, and I hadn't ever purchased a snake from them. And so they told me that they had a sort of a protocol where if you didn't buy a snake from them, then they wouldn't share information on how to breed and how to do anything. And I just said, okay, well, thanks a lot for your time. I, appreciate that. And then I remember getting off the phone and I told myself, don't ever say that to anybody. Don't you ever, you know,
Right. I'm like, that's
just don't. And so I've just created just the opposite type of mindset. I'm not full of secrets. I have no secrets. You want to know something about whatever I do? Sure, I'll be glad to, share it all. And what's interesting? I've been doing this a long time and I can't remember if I've ever had a negative experience. And you're right, I put my phone number out on my YouTube videos, my Instagram stuff, and I just don't know. I don't think I've ever had a negative experience. So I just will continue to do it, you
that's
know.
awesome. What's with this amount of time, what's one like kind of one memory? So what I kind of want to do with this is,
Hmm.
before we jump into all your projects and things like that, is just kind of like give a picture of life throughout the times for the
Okay,
industry, because it's changed drastically
sure,
within the last 10 years and 20 years and things like that. So kind of, if
sure.
you could
So,
pinpoint one moment for us.
sure. Well, I remember back in the day when if you wanted to buy a boa from somebody that was not a local, you you were paying by the foot. It
Really?
wasn't it wasn't about where it came from, wasn't anything. It's the longer the snake, the more it cost, and that was kind of interesting,
So people were like power feeding back then to try to make their bows as big as
I don't think anybody knew anything. There was no power. I mean, at least it wasn't called power
in
feeding.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, they just if they had a 6 foot snake boa constrictor, well, then it cost $150. If it was 5 feet, then it was $100, and they had increments. How much it would cost per foot.
Hmm.
So that was kind of interesting back in the day. Um, the caging has definitely changed. It's back in the day there was no heater tape. Way back, I'm talking 40 years ago. Um, it was just just a heat lamp. That's all we had. Um, but yeah, the breeding is everything's totally changed. But hopefully the mindset has not. Where if people need help, that people are out there willing to give them a hand and help them. And it's just the kind of person I am. It's just the way I've always been, and it's just it's what floats my boat. I love helping people, and so it's just a part of who I am.
And you said that you started with colubrids. What were you working with when you first started out?
Mostly, oh god, I shouldn't say mostly because I had just about everything. Cow Kings were a big project of mine. 50/50s were Cow Kings, Mega Band Cow Kings, Gray Bands, Mexes, Pyros. You pretty much name it as a colubrid. Negri, the Mexican blacks. I love Mexican black
I
king
love them.
snakes. Um, yeah, you name it, I pretty much worked with it. Mandarin rat snakes, gray bands, um, a lot of the Zanatas, the mountain king snakes. I never had just one of the dream snakes is I never had an indigo snake. I've always wanted it kind of an indigo, um, but yeah, colubrids was how I got started, and then I was actually in the process of selling out that collection when I saw my first photograph of a pied. And I thought, are you kidding me? And I took all the money that I had gained from selling out my colubrid collection. And at the time I was producing about 300 colubrids a year. I was in it.
Wow.
I was thick into it. And I just took all the money that I had gained from selling out my colubrid collection and then reinvested into ball pythons. Just went from colubrids to ball pythons, and yeah, made this 100% switch.
That's freaking awesome. So are you still strictly just ball pythons to this day, or are you kind of mixing it up a little bit now? Or
Yeah, I have passing thoughts. I even have passing thoughts of getting into Burmese pythons, like the pieds and the albino pieds and stuff like that. It's just that I don't really have the income or the budget to really get into that. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do some trades and get into the Burmese, but we'll see. But yeah, mainly the ball pythons.
okay, nice. And how big would you say your collection is now?
I have about 50,000 snakes right now. No, just kidding. No, I
Well,
honestly,
Wilbanks just lost the biggest reptile shop in the U.S. Just saying. No,
I have just over 100. I used to have about 200, and I've been downsizing for over the last 2 or 3 years.
understandable.
Yeah.
It's it's even that in and of itself's quite a feat. I don't know. Well, maybe it's because I had such a small collection for so long. I was like, oh, I got 30 ball pythons. I got a lot of animals. This is,
It is. You're right.
and then that first breeding season, you just like blow up, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't have anything.
I know, huh?
Oh man. So you started out with pieds, and when did you start looking at like intertwining into the doubles, and what made you go that route? Like,
Sure. Well, uh, yeah. When I know Dan and Dan and Colette Sutherland pretty well through the years, and one time I went down south and saw them at an expo, and they had a pied clown on their table, and it was one of the first ones ever produced, if not the first one. And I had a pied at home, an adult pied and an adult clown, and I just thought, well, I know what I'm going to do when I get home. So yeah, I went home and produced two years of double hets, and I saved 3.5 double hets, and then started my pied clown project from there. And now I've been in that project for probably 12, 13, 14 years now.
oh wow, that's they are very beautiful animals. I really enjoy looking at your Instagram and watching what you're
Oh,
doing
thanks.
with it, along with your gold blush project. What what did or when exactly did you see that pop up, or how did you bring that to life, and like what caught your
Sure.
eye in that made you really push it?
Sure. So when let's go back to Dan and Colette, because I think they might have had something to do with the gold blush. So when I bought my first Mojave, I was actually able to go and pretty much pick out my animal of all of their clutches. And they were the first ones to start the Mojave project. And so personally, what I think might have happened was that the animal that I had picked up, the Mojave that I got from them, was an amazing Mojave. It almost looked like a Pastave. It just was so bright and colorful. And so I took that animal home. And here's an interesting thing for the people that are listening. My first Mojave. Now remember, Mojaves go for what, $50 now or something like that. My first Mojave cost me $7,500.
Holy this
Yeah.
is pre the chase for the white snake. Once they figured it out,
No,
right?
this is way before. This is way before Whitey. And so anyway, I think that through the course of the years, I started noticing that I was producing some amazing looking normals, and I would sell them for $300 a piece for normals. And through the course of time, I just started holding those normals back, wondering if they were actually normals. And then what I did was I actually was able to reproduce them. And what's interesting about the gold blush trait is that in with the high expression gold blush, they have two yellow dots right underneath their nostril, or just above their nostrils, and I just started holding those back, and I realized that I was actually able to produce them, so I was able to create that gene, and at least at this point, it's a dominant gene trait. It could be a co-dominant. I may have produced a super a couple years ago, and if I did, I sold it. So so, but yeah, it's a really interesting project. It's not one that stands out a lot. It's sort of like um, it's kind of sneaker gene trait. It's like a yellow belly, but maybe not even as visual as a yellow belly, because there are times that you can actually ID a yellow belly in a 3, 4, 5 gene animal. But at least some people can. I don't know if I can, um, but yeah, so it's definitely a very interesting gene. It's a high. I call it a highlighter. It definitely creates a very. Um, I think it increases the quality of just about everything I bring to it, and it's just sometimes it's very difficult to ID it. It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with the jungle boas, but with the
Mm-hmm.
jungle boas, you have high expression and low expression, and even though they have their low expression jungles, you can even still throw a super jungle out of them. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's it's not an extreme gene. It's a very light um, gene trait, but I'm having fun with it.
How many because you said you were at 100 animals now, just to give people an idea, because you have the years of experience and you, you kind of understand what it takes to work a project. How many projects would you say that you're actually working with those 100 animals currently?
Mm, I don't know, 10, 12. I don't know, not too many. I'm really focused on the Pied Clown project, and that's my major focus right now. And then we'll just start throwing a bunch of things at it, and that's
Well, that's what I was gonna say is like when you say like 10 or 12, does that mean like maybe you have a clown that has this and you're like, well, if I throw that, I want to throw that codom or whatever's in the mixture into the clown pied. So is it technically kind of working the clown? I don't know.
yeah.
That's one of the things that
I
runs in my head.
to tell you the truth, I'll just simplify. In my, it's my goal to have Pied Clown and Gold Blush in everything I own. That's
I
pretty
like
much
that.
it's
I like
yeah,
that.
and that will include other things too: fire, leopard, um, special, you know. But those three major are those three major gene traits are my focus.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things that I'm trying to talk about more because it's one of the or it's part of the motto of our sponsor, right? Is innovation. And over the years, I'm sure you've seen a lot of innovation and some declination. I don't know.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
guess that works. I don't know if that's what you would
Yeah.
want to say it. You've seen stuff that works really well and has helped the industry, and some stuff that hasn't helped so much. What's one of the major things that stands out to you in kind of both categories of that?
Uh, well, if I understand your question, things like people using back heat.
Hmm.
That used to be a pretty common thing until I think, till people started realizing that if you'd had back heat, your animals were pretty much going to live in that ambient temperature area, and that ambient temperature, unless it's into the 85 range or so, is going to be much too cool, and you're going to start seeing some respiratory infection. And
Hmm.
it's interesting to me, um, where how I go into pet shops, Petco, PetSmart, whatever, mom and pop pet shops, and it's interesting to me to find out that when they sell a ball python to someone, they very rarely, or at least in my experience, I very rarely have seen where they recommend to the new owner of the snake to not only have heat from underneath the cage, but also from above. Because if you're not going to create a situation where that ambient temperature is warm enough, your animals are just not going to do well. And it's interesting to see that even though the industry as a whole understands that ambient temperature is really important, the the pet shop level of the industry does not. So those are some things that I've seen that are kind of going backwards. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, absolutely. So the thing that really made me start thinking about that, and I was joking about this at the show today here locally, and we were talking about like the '90s and early 2000s trend of the heat rocks, right? Where
oh
you
yeah,
throw a heat rock in the tank and
they
you don't
still do
hook it
it.
to a thermostat, and that was the go-to back then, right?
Well,
And
they not wouldn't even hook it to a thermostat. They just plug it into
yeah,
the
that's what I
wall.
was saying. You just plug it
Yeah,
in the wall and throw it in there,
yeah,
and it'll be okay because it heats
yeah,
your snake.
yeah.
But
Not
and
so
just
much.
kind of the downfall and how many animals were injured from that, and just the craziness that came out of it. Um, I I think I think that was kind of, like I said, the downfall of innovation there. I think it was a good idea because they had good
Hmm.
intentions. At least I would hope they had good intentions when they
Yeah,
came up with the idea. But
right.
maybe they're just like, hey, if we just burn all their animals, they'll get more animals. But who
Yeah, let's
knows?
hope not.
Yeah. But and that's kind of what made me think about it, right? Is the silly things that we talk about day to day. We see trends in this industry, and
Hmm.
sometimes they're for the better, sometimes they're for the worse. So it's kind of my way of picking another mind and saying, well, what did you see, or what's something that stands out to you, right? And one of the other things that I think about a lot now is like the multitude of different types of enclosures that we're looking at. Whereas like we give people crap for tanks, though people are doing really cool stuff with bioactive. And I still, to this day, like I was talking to people at the show and I was just like, you know, unless you're going to be on top of it every single day, I just don't think a tank's the way to go for most people. Your animal thrives a lot better in like a sterilite tub, as bad as that sounds for a lot of people, but
Yeah,
they're going to shed better, they're going to live better, and you can slide that tub like under your bed or something so they're in that dark place as
yeah,
long as you have it set up correctly. But
yeah. And
it's
and
just
with
interesting.
me, I'm kind of anal on cleanliness, especially in my snake's
Oh, nice.
personal environment. Um, it's got to be clean. I'm changing water. Well, I would say almost every day. But I don't ever let water go 3 days without changing it. And I use newspaper, so I know exactly when my snakes go to the bathroom. And I'm one of those guys that I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm taking care of my farm animals at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm
Oh
going from
wow.
one tub to the next, to the next, to the next, just looking for an excuse to clean a cage. And and I want my animals to be super healthy. I have a vet tech background, and I get phone calls almost every day from people all over the country that are having problems, and it's respiratory infection that is killing most of everybody's snakes out there. And
100%.
it's a lot of it has to do with not understanding how important the ambient temperature is, because it's not the higher end temperatures that are really going to concern me about your snakes. It's the lower end temperatures, and if you start dropping below 80, 77 for days at a time, our animals are just ball pythons are just not designed to handle that kind of lack of heat.
Right.
you know
What do you personally run for your ambient, or like what are you trying
Ambient,
to maintain within that?
yeah, I like 83. Yep.
That's pretty warm.
Yeah.
You getting a nice little sauna sit while you're cleaning in the
No, but
reptile
it's just
room.
it's and I'm probably a little bit more concerned than most people. But yeah, I like 81 to 83. Yep. And if it goes any lower than 81, I start crying.
Well, I think I actually I don't have my thermostat right here. It's probably close to 80 in my room
Mhm.
right now, but I keep my house at 75, but with them having the belly heat running and the door
Sure.
staying closed at all times, I would say it's probably close to 80.
Yeah, I mean, when I
Um,
walk into my snake room, I take pretty much the first thing I do is take my temp gun
yeah,
and point it at the wall or the ceiling or the floor or whatever. It's not the high end that I'm concerned about, it's the low end.
right.
Yep.
100%. I can understand that. So let's get to one of my favorite things about you, and this is actually what besides Earl. So before I really got into
Little
breeding, when I was
Earl.
just growing stuff up, I was well, I still am. I'm a huge Cusco fan. Like he's a great person in and out,
Oh yeah,
and
he's
I've
my
had the
little brother.
pleasure. I've had the pleasure of being at his house, and I remember very specifically a I forget what year it was. I want to say it was like 18 or 19, where he went on a herping trip with you and he filmed it. And I watched you go running after a snake, and then he was like, "Oh no, hold on," because he didn't want you diving into the bushes, but he couldn't keep up with you. And it's like it's awesome to see that enthusiasm when you're herping.
Oh yeah, I
That's
tell especially people that have never been with me before, and I'm really serious when I say this, but I just tell them I say, it's probably best that you walk behind me because if I see something, I'm going. I mean, and if you get in my way, you're going down with me. So I just warn people, especially non-reptile people, because most non-reptile people, when they see a snake, it's run for the hills, right? Well, I'm running at the snake, as you've seen, and yeah, it probably is funny to those that are watching, but to me, it's just fun, you know. But yeah,
what
I've always been that way, and I still herp. I'm probably gonna go out tonight or tomorrow, and I'll hopefully catch something. But yeah, I can't get enough of it. Isn't that strange?
I think that's one of the defining qualities of you. That's one of the things I love. What's been your favorite species to find in the wild so far?
Oh, definitely the Zanatas, the
Sonata.
mountain king snakes, the tricolored
Okay.
mountain kings. Yeah, they're definitely. Um, it's just an amazing looking snake, and then to be able to find them in the wild, just 20 miles from my house, it's just. And then where I go, there's every type of wildlife you can imagine. Um,
That's
the other
awesome.
day I was looking for mountain lions. I'm a mountain lion guy, so when I'm herping, it's a combination of herping and mountain lion hunting when it really comes down to it.
Hmm. That's I can't say that I've been to the point where I tried to track a big cat.
Yeah, that's
I don't think I have the cojones for that yet, but I will say I like to. I don't hunt elk, but I love the sound of elk. I love to
yeah,
stalk
sure,
elk when they're going
yeah.
through their migrations.
hmm
Um, but my
And I guess
so go ahead. I'm sorry.
one thing that maybe separates me from most other people is I've actually held mountain lions in my arms. I've actually had them purr and rub up against me, and just they're just great cats. They just really are. They're just like a big house cat, 110-pound house cat.
You
And
can't be
because I've
saying
had that,
stuff like that, Brian. Someone's gonna like go out in the wild, be
oh
like, "Well, I heard Brian Gundy do it." No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah. But I mean, they're great. Mountain lions and cheetahs. Cheetahs are so I mean, I'll tell you, if I could have a cheetah for a pet, I'd have a cheetah. There's no doubt. Cheetahs are great. They're so calm. They're just really gentle. And, yeah, really mellow.
Okay. So it wasn't my first experience. It was my second experience herping. So I went out with Marita, Deadly
Oh yeah,
Tarantula Girl,
of course. She's a sweet.
right after, and we've put, I think the first night. So I used to go over there to work venomous, and I've since it's not that I've lost the passion to do that, it's I realized my kids are too young to have that in my house, and lots of yelling from Earl. So I was like, I'll wait till the kids get a little bit older for this.
Yeah.
But we decided to go out after one of the nights that I went over there for some training, and I think we have maybe 6 hours in at this point, and we're running through, and we found an Alterna, and we're like freaking out and
Oh
super
yeah.
excited, and
Well, that's where the term screamer came from, was when people were out herping and found Alternas and gray bands, Blair's phase, whatever. They would scream because it's one of those lifetime experiences, right? And that's where the term, that's a screamer. That's where that term came from. Gray band hunting or herping.
So the older gentleman that kind of told them the area that he used to herp, he said it would usually take him, I want to say he said 50 hours on average. 50 hours of hunting to even spot one, not even get hands on, but just to spot one.
Wow.
And she looked at me and she's like, "You're my good luck charm or something." Because we literally spent maybe between 2 days, maybe 4 hours searching for him, and got one in hand.
Isn't that something?
And it was like, and that was the first rush. Like we found, so I grew up around Atrox, and it's not, I have a huge appreciation for them. The Western
Diamondback.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so I have an affinity towards them, but I like them. That's what I wanted to work with because that's what I knew. And so we were running into those. I was like, "Oh, those are cool. I like them." But finding something that I wasn't expecting to find is just because I knew it was in the country, but it was mind blowing, especially after hearing average 50 hours. Some people search their entire lifetime and never find them in the area. And find one that quick was crazy.
I have been herping for Zanatas since I was 10 years old. I've only found 5 in my whole life. And I have a friend that is a herper. He's down from the LA area. And I told him where I found one or found some. And the first time he went, he got one. And here I am. I might find one every 4 years. And I'm herping 4 days a week. And this guy just walked up to the trail and there it was. It just depends. You have to be at the right place at the right time. And,
So when you're doing it, do you kind of like look into the climate and like start temping stuff around you or pay attention and take notes to that? Or
I don't really take notes, more just mental notes. I don't road herp on full moons. And years ago, I had somebody tell me that, and I thought, come on, snakes don't know if it's full moon or not. How can that make any difference? Well, I can pretty much attest to the fact that I don't think I've ever caught anything on a full moon.
It's too bright, or is it just like
evidently the animals that are preyed upon seem to realize that it's too bright, and it's probably spooks them a little bit, and they must know that, or have an understanding that bright nights mean danger, potential danger. So I don't know, but I'll tell you, if I go herping on full moons, I don't catch much. I don't see much.
What's some of the changes that you've seen with herping? With California changing so drastically with like populations and the way the states really spread out with people. Do
Yeah,
you
well, I mean,
see the pressing affecting a lot more, or is there like a change in your herping areas now that you kind of gave up on some areas, or
no, well, let's talk a little bit about the legalities that's been going on in California for the last, let's say, 20 years or so, and the changes that have been made. So years ago, if you had a California king snake and you wanted to breed it and sell the babies, you had to have what we called a propagation permit. And that meant that you had to go with Fish and Wildlife, California Fish and Wildlife, and you had to become a registered California king snake owner. And you were given a propagation number, and any babies that you were to sell from a California king snake clutch, excuse me, that that propagation number needed to go with that snake. And if you sold it to someone, they had to have that propagation number. So that was years ago, and people, I remember a guy, Lloyd Lemke, long ago passed away, but um, he had he had some rosy boas, and when I say some, I think a couple of hundred, where Fish and Wildlife actually came to his house and confiscated him, and
oh
they
wow,
all died. They died. And so there's a lot of stuff that used to go on in from the legality side of things that they've kind of backed off on, especially with indigenous animals, especially in California. I don't know about anywhere else, but so now I don't think you have to have a propagation permit number, um, but there still are, um, some animals that are protected. You know,
right.
the San Francisco garter snake and some animals in that realm. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's been some changes, that's for sure.
Do you see it being like, I don't want to say I don't want to say that it's less, because I feel we we don't have a just verification of how many or how much wildlife is in an area, but just with the way that cities and stuff are
What
expanding,
happened
and
here?
I think it went from your
John, I lost
car
you
to
again.
just we'll figure it out. It's okay. Do you want to jump out and then jump back in? Okay. Do you want to exit out and then come back in? Can you
John,
go exit out and then come back in? Are you there? There we go. He'll come back in. We'll figure it out. I really think. There we go. You got it, me?
can you hear me?
I got you.
John?
Can you hear
Oh,
me?
crap.
Oh,
Shoot.
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Hey, the lives, it happens. We're gonna figure this out, guys. We're gonna figure this out. Let
John,
me see here. I hear
can you
you.
hear
I
me?
got you. I got you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
How come?
I'm not sure why it's not letting you hear me. It sounded like it went from your car to your phone. Let me see. Where are we at?
John? Okay.
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know what happened. It sounded so. What it sounded like is it went from your car or something, or like a
Yeah.
Bluetooth,
I
to
actually
just your phone.
turned off my car because I had my air conditioning running. But now I'm getting too hot, so I'm just gonna open up the door. I don't want to mess things up. So you were saying something about Brian Cusco, and what were you saying
So
about
just
him?
watching that video and watching you
Oh,
dive in about it, and then I remember him talking about it later about how he was worried that you were gonna hurt yourself, but at the same time he's like a little kid still, and I love
Oh
it.
yeah. Don't worry about me hurting myself. I'm 18 till I die.
Oh man,
It's
is
all
it?
about it's all about
Oh,
adventure.
oh, heck yeah. Is the herping there changed just because of that, or like have you seen the population of human kind of make it more difficult to find animals just because of the noise or like the vibrations going through or like the expanding of construction?
I live in a pretty populated area, San Francisco Bay Area. More lives about 50 miles south of San Francisco, and I live in San Jose. And in my to tell you the truth, I don't think the building of houses and stuff like that has done much to negate the population of herps in the Bay Area. But one thing that I think has negated the amount of herps are wild turkeys.
Really?
Yeah. The areas that I go to, and I have been going for years and years and years, for 50 years, um, is that now I'm finding more wild turkeys and less snakes. And I know that the turkeys are gobbling them up. Years and years ago, when I was literally just a kid, we caught this garter snake. It was a huge garter snake. I mean, close to probably 4 feet long, huge. And we put it in a rabbit cage. What did we know, right? To just put it in the rabbit cage. Well, this garter snake had babies. And garter snakes, as most of you know, have live birth. Well, we ended up walking into the backyard of this guy's house one time, and this garter snake had about 30 babies or so, and he had chickens. And these chickens were running around the yard gobbling up these
Worms.
baby garter snakes, thinking they were worms, right? So I'm thinking, I know the places that I go now they're just, I mean, I saw a herd, a flock of turkeys the other day. There must have been 40 or 50 turkeys in this flock, and I'm not talking about flying. They're just down on the ground. And, they're
Oh
going through
wow.
everything, eating whatever they can. So and
Hmm.
places where I go where, I mean, I can even go snake hunting in people's neighborhoods. To tell you the truth, I know neighborhoods where I can catch snakes, and it's not like up in the mountains or anything. It's just that there are snakes in the yard. But yeah, I think wild turkeys, especially in this area, have made a huge difference.
That I see. I wouldn't have even thought about that. That's
Which
funny.
one?
So when I lived in New England, I lived with my dad for like a year before I joined the military, and
Hmm.
he
And thank you,
had
by the way, for your service.
yes, sir. It's my pleasure. We had this little flock of wild turkeys, and we used to laugh. This sounds really bad. We used to laugh because uh, it rains like a ridiculous amount up there, right?
Sure.
Like
Right.
you really only have a couple of weeks of solid sunshine a year
Yeah.
up there,
Okay.
and you could literally hear the turkeys fall out of the trees from drowning at
For
times.
what?
Fall out of the trees from drowning
Really?
because it would start raining, and they're not the brightest bird,
Sure.
and they would look up while it's raining, and they would literally drown themselves from looking
Are
up
you? I
and just fall out of the tree.
never heard that for. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, but something that I'm gonna say not smart, but a wild animal like that I wouldn't think would be such a massive predator for something, but
Yeah,
it
but
makes sense because they see it as a
sure.
worm or
And when I
something like
when I
that.
was a kid, I've lived here all my life. When I was a kid, you never saw wild turkeys, never, just never. And now I
Hmm.
can't go anywhere really without finding a group of them. So yeah, I think there's been I think they have taken a certain percentage of the reptiles in the in the wild. And that's just, I don't have anything
Right.
to back that up
Well,
with, just observation,
right.
gut
What
feeling.
would you say if you had to pinpoint? So we talked about your favorite species to find, but if you could pinpoint a certain story from your herping time that really just sticks out to you, and like if you could walk us through that event.
Okay. All right. So there was a time when I had colubrids, and we had some neighbors move in across the street, a woman and like 3 or 4 kids or something, and she wanted to come over and see the animals. So I said, yeah, sure, bring the kids, and I'll give you guys a tour. So we're walking this at this time. I had my colubrids in the garage, so I was walking her through the garage, showing her the different animals and stuff, and then she asked, oh, why do you have these snakes in separate cages? And I said, well, some of these animals will actually kill and eat other snakes, because I had quite a few California king snakes at the time. And as our tour continued, she looks at one cage and she goes, well, then how come those 2 snakes are together? And I looked in this cage, and there's a California king snake just about finishing a Jalisco, no, not a Jalisco, a Sinaloan milk snake. And when I say finishing, it was eating it. Okay. So I opened up the snake's cage. I pulled out the two snakes, pulled the one snake out of the California king snake's stomach or throat.
Oh man.
And the Sinaloan milk snake was deader than a doornail, just as limp as a noodle. Excuse me. And I had just finished my CPR training at work. So I thought, you know what? And remember, now I'm a vet tech too. So I just put 2 and 2 together, and I thought, if I laid that snake's head in the palm of my hand and curl my fingers over the snake's head, I can create a straw, and I can blow air into, open the snake's mouth and blow air into the snake's mouth. And I just started doing that.
Oh
And
man.
and after about 10 minutes or so, I was able to get a breath out of the snake. One breath. No tongue action, no nothing. Limp as a noodle.
Hmm.
And about 5 minutes later, I got another breath. And before you knew it, the snake was sticking its tongue out. And then about a half hour later, the snake seemed to be pretty good, a little slow. But I fed the snake the following day, and then I wrote an article for Reptiles magazine, and wrote it, and they actually published it. It was in the Living with Reptiles section, in the back section of the magazine. So I named the snake Lazarus, and everything was fine. But yeah, that's one of the strangest experiences, where I was able to give mouth to mouth resuscitation, and it worked. And I've done it actually several times since then. I walked into a pet shop one time, and there was a pair of ball pythons that had eaten the same mouse. So one ball python started at the head, and the other ball python started at the ass end. And before you knew it, the one ball python was actually eating the other ball python, because it was just eating the other end of the snake. And so I ended up giving that snake mouth to mouth and revived that one too. But yeah, there's been a few things like that.
Oh man.
And then another good one, and you'll like this, maybe not, was when I was actually bit by a rattlesnake. I was showing
Oh,
some
wow.
friends of mine how to catch a rattlesnake without getting bit, and I ended up getting tagged on my left index finger. And I got a helicopter ride for about 50 miles through the mountains of the Bay Area, and
Hmm.
then I went into a coma for 3 days. I was in a coma, and so I don't freehand rattlesnakes anymore. I find them all the time. I have a pair of tongs. If I find them in the street, I just take them off the road so they won't get hit. But yeah, I don't mess with venomous stuff anymore.
I don't blame you. I don't
Yeah.
blame you, sir. That's. Do you know what type it was?
Yeah, it was a Northern Pacific, Norpac.
They're pretty, man.
Yeah,
Very
it
beautiful.
was a beautiful snake.
So with doing the main three aspects of what we consider herpetoculture,
Hmm.
with between the education, the breeding, and the actual herping, um, what would you say is your favorite aspect, and how important do you think it is to have all three aspects as a keeper?
To tell you the truth, I think I have evolved into thinking that the programs, the presentations that I do are actually the most personal rewarding for me, because I can take all the experience and all um, everything that's happened to me through the years or whatever, and share them with people that in most cases are scared to death of reptiles, especially snakes. And to be able to take people that are shaking in their boots 1 minute, and then a half an hour later have that person ask to put a Burmese python over their shoulders is
Hmm.
like no other feeling I can experience. And it's just there's just this humanistic thing that if I'm able to change that person's perspective from going to being scared to death to wanting one as a pet, then I've done my job. And
Mm,
that's what I love. Yeah, and I
what
love breeding. Cutting eggs is like the most exciting thing I could ever imagine. And herping is all just, when I'm out in the field and I see a snake, it's just, it's like I'm 18, and it's like I don't have anything that's holding me back. I'll fly through the air and do whatever it takes to catch it. Um, but yeah, I like all three, but I love the educational part when I'm teaching people. When I ask an audience, do snakes lay eggs or do they have live birth, and they all say lay eggs, I'm going, okay, well then let's learn some things here. And so yeah, it's just a time that I can um, help people to understand that these are not dangerous, aggressive animals. In fact, a lot of times I compare them to puppies. It's the way I'm able to get my audiences to come over to my side is I'm kissing my snakes all the time. I've never known anybody that kisses snakes more than I do. It's almost like I'm making out with them. It's crazy, but but uh, but that does have an effect on the people in the audience that are
right,
scared. They start.
right.
I mean, I if I as when I first kiss a snake and I'm looking out in the audience and I see people that are like, "What in the world is he doing?" And it's just it through by the course of the end of the program, I've probably kissed, you know, 4 or 5 snakes. I don't know. But yeah, it's one of the ways that I'm able to win them over is kissing a snake.
How do you think that we as a community could do a better job with educating? Because I think that's it. I remember when I was growing up and I first realized that like they were pets, and even when I came back to the industry 5 years ago, like education was very much pushed, but um now that I see more aspects, and I think it kind of falls on the individual a little bit because I was looking at turning into a business. It might be that I'm just more focused on that. And so now social media has realized that. And so that's what they're pushing towards me and not so much the education. But how do you think we as an industry could move forward to be better educators so that we can grow this industry or grow the
I
love of
I
the
would
animals?
I would say wherever you are, start doing what I'm doing, because that's I mean I tell my audiences all the time because they're so scared that they're going to get bit. And I tell my audiences that over 50,000 children have now handled my animals, and we have never had a single issue. So if that's the case, then just think about how many people, if I've turned or at least had something to do with changing the minds of some of those 50,000 people, just think what we could do if we had more of of people like me out there doing the same thing. And
100%.
and to tell you the truth, it's a very lucrative business. I've never had so much money in my life. Let's put it that way. And so yeah, if you guys,
Brian Gundy just started a new trend.
yeah,
Everyone's
get
gonna
out
switch
there
to
and do some.
education instead of just breeding, and we're gonna hashtag it, and it'll be like hashtag Gundy style.
I'm telling you, it's so much fun. And I have people, I blindfold people. I have them come up from the audience blindfolded. I have tegus kissing adults, stuff like that. It's just so much fun. There's, and again, I mean, you know, this is how I'm paying my bills. I'm hardly even producing any clutches this year at all.
I think that's awesome. I think that's
And
awesome.
but yeah, and I wanted to give my snakes a year off. I've never done that before, and I thought, you know what, this year I'm so focused on doing the educational programs, especially coming off of COVID, because with COVID it shut me down as far as the
Right.
programs go. But yeah, now we're back in doing. I think last month I did 36 programs, and we'll hopefully we'll continue that through the year.
Heck yeah. So since we brought up breeding again, this is something that I keep talking to people about, and I talked to Brandon last week about because we have projects together. But when you're going in, do you like cycle feed, or do you give them like a fasting period? Do you just feed the same throughout, or how do you change if you do at all? I know some people don't, some people do. But what's kind of your feeding regimen as you're preparing them to breed, and then while you're breeding your animals?
Sure. So, preparation for breeding, I start in about October, November, October. And to tell you the truth, I don't power feed, but I feed my females as much as they want to eat. I'm not trying to get any particular size. I don't care if it has the biggest ball python on the planet. I just want that animal to be carrying a particular amount of weight, and I just call it being in form. Um,
Okay.
and it's a heavy animal. You know, the heavier the animal, and if you do it right, the bigger your clutches. I mean, I had 2 or 3 years ago, I had two 14 egg clutches, and they were from animals that I feed large rats to. You know,
Oh wow.
so I'm when I'm breeding, I'm looking for the biggest clutches I can find or I can
Right.
get, and the one way that I do that is to load up the females.
Now, when you're feeding that, are you feeding live, or are you feeding pre-killed,
Always,
or
always live.
always live?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I've never even applaud to you, sir, that your animals are. That scares me so much. Like I'm scared to
What?
even give my females a medium.
Live?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Well, that's yeah. In fact, yesterday I gave I had a old sickly rat because I raise my own rats too, and I had an old sickly female rat, big rat, and I had nothing that could eat her. And my berm that I use for my shows, the programs that I do, had just eaten. Anyway, so I put this. I mean, it's a big rat into this het pied cage, a female het pied, and she had no trouble with it at all.
Mm. It's just
And this is a big rat, and she just downed it like it was a medium.
it's crazy. I I think it goes to show though, like there's a huge there's a huge variation no matter what you do, and I'm not saying that anything's wrong, anything's right.
Yep.
It's just it's all about variations about the
Yeah,
animals
and
themselves.
find out what works for you guys. If I do it a certain way, that's because I've made 100,000 mistakes up till this point, and that's what my mistakes have taught me. um, if you guys make mistakes, just think of them as opportunities. We're all making mistakes. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how, I'm still making mistakes. I'm still learning, and hopefully we'll never stop. But yeah, if I talk to somebody, if I talk to Earl does things totally different than I do. I do
100%.
things totally different than he does. Um, but you know what? It works. It works for him, and it works for me, and it works for you. And as long as you follow the sort of the baseline, um, husbandry, you know, then you probably will be okay. Keep them warm. Don't let them get too cold. Um, it's just a sad thing when you pick up a snake that costs you $2,000 or $3,000 and it's sitting there blowing bubbles out of its nose.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Hmm. Uh, I, I I don't even want to imagine that. Don't even want to
It's
imagine
just
that.
part of the game, you guys.
Yeah, for sure. What would you? So, with all your experience, if you had to really push towards this new generation that's coming up, what's some advice that you would give all these new breeders and new keepers coming in that kind of just view this and get swept up by it?
Desert ghost, desert ghost, desert ghost.
I love it.
Okay.
Oh, that was
We,
perfect.
we can end we can end this conversation right now. Yeah,
Oh man.
that's my suggestion. Find a mentor. Get my phone number. Call me up. And find a local mentor, someone that you can trust, someone that will give you advice, and follow them. You know, they're going to tell you the things that work for them, the things that don't, and that's, in my opinion, that's the best way to start, is to get yourself a mentor.
Okay.
There's plenty of them out there.
So I remember when I had Earl on, he was like, it was a little difficult sometimes, and that you were actually kind of shy towards the idea since he was so far away. What was some of the things that you found, or like that you decided to kind of test to see if it would work with him being so far away and mentoring him?
Uh, and can you be more specific?
Well, I mean, like, so I when I had him on, and even when I've talked to him, he was like, initially when because you couldn't be hands on with him, right? Or you couldn't have him do hands on. It was full through explanation over the
Mm-hmm.
phone and
Mm-hmm.
hoping that he was enacting it right as you were telling him.
Right.
So, what was, I guess, sort of that kind of is the challenge. But what was some of the challenges that you found with mentoring over the phone versus in person, or just generally in explaining to someone that didn't know what they were doing?
Sure. Well, I mean, as an example, I mean, if you're working with a snake and you're wanting to know if there should be any concerns about you getting bit, it's very difficult to explain to somebody without them being there to visually see. So when it comes time for like a snake, if it's and it's really comes down to fear, or the lack of it. That's one reason why our snakes bite, is because they're scared. Um, so if you have a snake, and let's say I was talking to him, and if it was following you, every move you make visually, then that's the animal that you need to be careful of, because it's afraid. And if you get beyond that comfort zone of that animal, it's going to do what it can to protect itself. So those are some things that are hard to mentor from 2,000 miles away. But Earl was, Earl quite knew quite a bit to begin with. He wasn't. it wasn't his first rodeo. He understood animals. He'd already been having reptiles for a long time. So he wasn't one that maybe I talked to him a little bit more about the educational presentations because now he's done some also. But he didn't really need a lot of he knows his husbandry, and we do things differently,
Right.
but the bottom line is they work, and that's all that matters. Here's the story I tell people sometimes. This man, his name is Bob Applegate. Most of your colubrid breeders will probably know who he is, but he was a legend, and he had written books and things like that, and one time he and I were talking, and I forgot where I was going to go with this. Okay, I can't remember now. I'm old. Oh, I know what it was. He was telling me how he incubated his colubrid eggs, and when he told me how he did it, I looked at him. I go, "Well, that's a little unorthodox, don't you think?" And he looks at me, and mind you, now this guy's a legend. Here I am, a baby colubrid breeder, and I'm telling this guy it's a little unorthodox. And he looks at me and he goes, "Well, then maybe, but it works." And I'll tell you, that has stuck with me my whole life. It works. And there was nothing I could say. It could be as unorthodox as I think it is, but what difference does it make? It works. And so that was words of wisdom that I needed to hear. That really has made a big difference in my life, really. And this was 30 years, 25 years ago when he first made that comment. But it works, and so it allows us all to do things a little bit different as long as it works. You know,
Okay.
Earl does things differently than you do, John. You know, but in both situations, it works. So.
So where I'd like to leave, I like how you brought up a legend for your time. That's freaking awesome. It's something that I think about regularly. We're watching the people that kind of help form the entire industry slowly disappear, unfortunately.
Sure.
And how do you think that we could more uh, how do I want to put this? How do you think we could better approach those people and get their stories and like get the history, because that's something that we don't want to lose. We absolutely want to maintain that record, right? And it's something that a lot of us that either do podcasts or do any sort of content, especially
Mhm.
recently, are trying to reach out and do. How do you think we could better reach out to that? And I thank you for being as open as you are again, because the fact that you do this is it's freaking amazing. I really appreciate it. I love watching all the episodes that you do with different people and just the content you create in general.
Mhm.
But I feel like there's a lot of history and a lot of people that have just so much that's being lost slowly over the last couple of years. And before that happens and we no longer have it, how do you think we could better work to get that brought out?
Probably, people like Brian Cusco and Garrett Hartle, yourself, getting out there on the internet, because let's face it, it's this in this day and age, it's really the ultimate way to reach out. Um, you know, there could be 5 million people watching this video. Not that there is, but I'm just saying you can reach out and touch people's lives. You can show them just how gentle these animals are, and 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 use the internet to share that information. And you guys are, and that's what we're doing right now. So I would just say more, 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 more of this.
Okay. Uh, I like that. Well, I have the utmost respect for you, as you know, and I really appreciate your time. I know it's like 100 degrees out there, and I don't want
Not
you to.
anymore.
Well, I don't want you sitting in your car in like 100 degrees and using all your gas, because I know it's
Oh,
probably like $6-7 or more out there right now.
That's okay. I
something
have a
crazy.
Honda. We're good.
And I got to get the kiddos ready for bed so that I can
Sure.
get back to the show tomorrow. But I appreciate all your time, sir. I definitely would love to chat more as we
Sure.
go
And
through.
John, I just want to say how much I appreciate what you're doing too. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. I'm just trying to share my love for it.
I know, and I appreciate it, and we all do. So, kudos to you.
Thank you, sir. I hope you guys enjoy this. If you have questions, make sure you please reach out to Mr. Gundy. Mr. Gundy, how can we all get a hold of you if we want to?
Yeah, call me at 408-981-6694, or you can email me at fgsnakes@sbcglobal.net, or message me on Instagram. I'm very busy on Instagram these days. I'm probably putting content up every day, and I'm not doing much on YouTube anymore. I'm just focusing on Instagram. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I'm here. I'm glad to help. Really, seriously.
All right. You guys have a great night. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your World Snake Day. Go play with your reptiles. Get out of here.
Thanks, John.
We'll see you guys next weekend. Thank you guys so much.
Take care, man.
Thank you, Mr. Gundy.
Bye.